Survivors would later describe it as a world unmade. Broken spears littering the roads, the canals running red, roof beams scattered where houses had stood for 200 years. This is how the people of the city remembered its ending, not as a battle, but as an amputation. On the morning of August 12, 1521, Tenochtitlan, the greatest city the Americas had ever built, home to more people than London or Paris at the time, was still standing. Fewer than 48 hours later, it was gone. Not gone the way a city burns. Gone the way a body dies. Hour by hour, organ by organ, until there is nothing left to save. For 500 years, historians have asked how the city fell so fast. But that's the wrong question. The real mystery is how it fell at all, when the people defending it outnumbered the men attacking them more than 100 to 1. We're going to walk through those final 48 hours, hour by hour, and by the end, you'll see that almost everyone tells this story wrong. If you love uncovering the real mechanisms behind history's great collapses, subscribe and hit the bell, because what happened in Tenochtitlan is one of the most misunderstood endings in history. To understand how something dies, you first have to understand how alive it was. Tenochtitlan sat in the middle of Lake Texcoco, a city built on an island that its own people had expanded by hand, basket of mud by basket of mud, into a metropolis of causeways, canals, and floating gardens. 3 great stone roads connected it to the shore, wide enough for 10 horses to ride abreast. A stone aqueduct carried fresh water in from the springs of Chapultepec. At its center stood the Templo Mayor, a twin-towered pyramid rising above a plaza that could hold tens of thousands of people at once. By the most conservative estimates, 200,000 people lived here. Some estimates run far higher. Either way, it was almost certainly larger than any city in Spain, and larger than most cities anywhere in Europe. Its market at Tlatelolco, the twin city fused to Tenochtitlan's northern edge, sold everything from gold jewelry to medicinal herbs to slaves, with an estimated 20 to 60,000 people passing through on a single trading day. Spanish soldiers who saw it for the first time compared it, without irony, to the great bazaars of Constantinople, the largest markets they had ever known. This was not a primitive settlement waiting to be discovered. It was the capital of an empire that had, for nearly a century, dominated central Mexico through a mixture of military conquest, tribute, and political alliance. And that last detail, alliance, is going to matter more than almost anything else in this story. The 48 hours we're about to walk through did not happen in isolation. They were the final chapter of a siege that had already been grinding the city down for 3 months. Hernan Cortes and his men had first entered Tenochtitlan in 1519 as guests, then captors, holding the Emperor Moctezuma II hostage inside his own palace. That arrangement collapsed in June 1520 in a single catastrophic night the Spanish would later call La Noche Triste, the Night of Sorrows. Warriors of the city rose up, and the Spanish fled across the causeways in the dark, losing hundreds of men, most of their horses, and nearly all the gold they had stolen. It was briefly total victory for the defenders. But Cortes did not go home. He retreated to the territory of Tlaxcala, Mexico's oldest and bitterest rival, and rebuilt. Over the following months, he assembled an army that was overwhelmingly indigenous. Tens of thousands of Tlaxcalan, Texcocan, and other allied warriors who had their own reasons, decades in the making, to want Tenochtitlan destroyed. His own Spanish force numbered fewer than 1,000 men. Then came something no army planned for. A smallpox epidemic, carried by an infected member of an earlier Spanish expedition, swept through the Valley of Mexico in late 1520. The disease had no precedent here, no partial immunity built up over generations. It killed with terrifying speed, and it killed indiscriminately, including the Emperor Cuitlahuac, who had led the resistance during La Noche Triste and died of it within months of taking the throne. By the time the siege proper began in May 1521, The city was already wounded before a single soldier crossed the causeway. Cortes' strategy for the next 92 days was methodical, almost surgical. Small ships called brigantines, built in sections at Tlaxcala and carried piece by piece over the mountains, launched onto Lake Texcoco to control the water and cut off canoe traffic. The aqueduct from Chapultepec was severed, ending the flow of fresh water. Causeway by causeway, block by block, canal by canal, the attacking force pressed inward, filling in canals with rubble from demolished buildings so their allies could advance without being ambushed from the water. By the dawn of August 12th, 92 days in, the defenders had been pushed back into a few remaining blocks of the Tlatelolco market district. Behind them, exhausted warriors, starving civilians, streets crowded with refugees who had nowhere left to retreat to. Ahead of them, an army that would not stop. The end was 2 days away, and almost everything you think you know about why it happened next is incomplete. Ask most people why Tenochtitlan fell, and you'll get the same answer. Spanish steel swords, armor, and gunpowder against indigenous weapons of wood, stone, and obsidian. Add horses, animals the defenders had never seen before, and cannon fire, and the outcome looks obvious. Technology won. It's a clean story. It's dramatic. And for over 100 years after the conquest, it was the story Spanish chroniclers told, because it was flattering. A handful of Europeans, through sheer technological and even spiritual superiority, brought down an empire. But was that really what happened? The numbers don't hold up. At the height of the siege, Cortes commanded perhaps 900 Spanish soldiers. His indigenous allies numbered anywhere from tens of thousands to, by some estimates, well over 100,000. On the day the city fell, the overwhelming majority of the fighters storming Tlatelolco were not Spanish at all. They were Tlaxcalans, Texcocans, and other indigenous peoples who had spent generations under Mexican domination and tribute demands, and who fought this war with their own weapons, their own tactics, and their own reasons for wanting the city gone. Steel and horses alone don't explain La Noche Triste either. The night, less than a year earlier, when this same technologically superior Spanish force was routed and nearly annihilated by the very warriors they would later defeat. The weapons hadn't changed between 1520 and 1521. The city had. What changed the outcome wasn't the sword. It was three things happening at once, each one making the others worse. The fall of Tenochtitlan wasn't one siege. It was three, layered on top of each other, each one attacking a different part of the same body. The first was military, and it was fought mostly by indigenous hands, using intimate knowledge of the causeways, canals, and rooftop fighting that Spanish commanders barely understood. The Tlaxcalan alliance didn't just add numbers. It added the local knowledge and motivation that made house-by-house urban warfare possible at all. The second was biological. Smallpox had already killed a staggering share of the city's population. Modern estimates for the broader epidemic run as high as a third to half of those infected before the siege had even reached its final weeks. It killed warriors who would otherwise have been fighting. It killed the emperor who would otherwise have been leading. It killed the food producers, the water carriers, the people who kept a city of 200,000 functioning. The third was logistical. Cutting the Chapultepec aqueduct meant no clean water. Controlling the lake with brigantines meant no canoes bringing in food from the mainland. By the final weeks, residents were reportedly drinking brackish lake water and eating whatever they could find. Lizards, bark, seeds normally left for animals. A starving, dehydrated, disease-ravaged population cannot fight the way a healthy one can, no matter how brave its warriors are. None of these three sieges alone would have brought down a city this size. Together, they created a feedback loop. Disease weakened the defense. The weakened defense couldn't protect the water and food supply. The collapsing supply accelerated disease and starvation, and the shrinking, starving population made every subsequent Spanish and Allied advance easier than the last. By August 12th, the battle for Tenochtitlan was no longer really a battle. It was the final stage of a system that had already failed. If you're starting to see the same pattern here that shows up again and again in history's great collapses, you're right, and that's exactly why this channel exists. Subscribe if you want to keep tracing these mechanisms with us. What follows is reconstructed from the two surviving traditions that recorded it. Spanish accounts, most famously the soldier Bernal Diaz del Castillo, and Nahua accounts gathered decades later by Bernardino de Sahagun directly from survivors. The exact hours are a reconstruction, not a transcript, but the sequence of events is drawn from both sides of the causeway. 48 hours before the end, dawn breaks over what's left of Tenochtitlan. The defenders hold only a handful of blocks around the Tlatelolco marketplace, the same market that once saw 60,000 traders in a single day. It is now packed instead with refugees, the old, the sick, the starving, pressed into a space never built to hold a siege. Cuauhtémoc, the young emperor who succeeded the smallpox-killed Cuauhtémoc, commands what remains of the city's fighting strength from somewhere within this shrinking perimeter. By midday, with 36 hours left, the final assault begins. Spanish soldiers and their allied army push into Tlatelolco from multiple causeways at once, filling canals with debris from collapsed buildings as they advance. The defenders lose their last natural barriers. Fighting is close, brutal, and constant, rooftop to rooftop, doorway to doorway. 24 hours remain when dawn breaks on August 13th. By Nahua accounts, this morning brought a sense that something had shifted for good. The remaining defended area has shrunk to almost nothing. Thousands of civilians attempt to escape by canoe across the lake. They run directly into the patrolling brigantines. Some are captured. Many are killed. The lake that once fed and connected this city has become another wall closing in on it. By midday, with 12 hours left, what remains of the city's leadership faces a choice with no good options. Keep fighting in a space now measured in dozens of buildings rather than city blocks, or try to save what's left of the population. Cuauhtémoc decides to attempt an escape by canoe, likely to rally resistance elsewhere or negotiate from ground that isn't already a killing field. Just 3 hours from the end, a Spanish brigantine commanded by Garcia Hogan spots a canoe crossing open water, more heavily escorted than the refugee boats around it. Hogan's ship overtakes it. Inside is Cuauhtémoc, along with his wife and a small group of nobles. 1 hour left. Cuauhtémoc is brought before Cortes. According to the accounts that survive, he offered Cortes a dagger and asked to be killed rather than live in defeat. Cortes refuses. He chooses instead to keep him alive as a hostage and a symbol of victory. Word of the emperor's capture spreads through what remains of the city within minutes. And then, nothing. Formal resistance ends. But the killing doesn't stop immediately. In the chaos following the surrender, Allied warriors continue attacking remaining pockets of defenders and civilians for hours afterward, settling scores generations in the making. By the time the fighting genuinely stops, a city that held perhaps 200,000 people 93 days earlier lies in ruins. Its final defenders are dead, captured, or scattered into the countryside. Tenochtitlan, in the form its people had built it, ceased to exist in less time than it takes to watch a long film twice over. Cortes didn't raze the site and start over somewhere else. He rebuilt directly on top of the ruins, using the same causeways, the same island, even stones from the same demolished temples. Mexico City stands there today. The Templo Mayor's foundations sit excavated in the open air just steps from the modern cathedral. One civilization's capital, literally buried beneath the next one's. The story people usually tell about that day is a story about weapons. The real story is about what happens when a military siege, a disease no one had immunity to, and a total blockade of food and water all hit the same city in the same 93 days. Steel didn't do that. Systems collapsed did. The same mechanism, in miniature, and compressed into hours instead of centuries. That has ended empires throughout this channel. The difference is that most of the collapses we cover here took generations to finish. Tenochtitlan took 48 hours to go from a wounded but living city to a memory buried under someone else's capital. If you want to keep tracing how great civilizations really fall, not the version in the textbooks, but the mechanism underneath it, subscribe and hit the bell. There are more endings like this one waiting to be unraveled.